could be with us today for this special session of a particularly important topic, and that is retaining talent in the modern age. There are many forces that are impacting the accounting profession, and the topics that we're going to cover today is part of my larger course called The Joyful Accountant, and I'll share some of the details of how you can purchase that course or be part of my coaching programs at the end of this session, and also a special offer that we'll have for those of you who have joined us in today's webinar. But some of the topics that I've culled out that I thought were particularly important that I wanted to share with you today was talking about the fourth industrial revolution and the impacts of automation. We're also going to talk a little bit about the licensure model that's coming up and statistics on company culture, the employee experience, and ways that we can build a great culture. So much to try to cover in just one short hour. Again, at the end of our session today, I'll share with you some links to my site to talk about my course, my coaching associated with improving our profession on many different levels. But again, lots to cover. Let's just jump right in. As we know, technology rapidly evolves. It wasn't necessarily always the case. It took a little time in what we consider the first three industrial revolutions that took place in our country. So the first became the first industrial revolution started somewhere around the end of the 18th century to the beginning of the 19th century. And the biggest change came in industries in the form of mechanization, which really served as the catalyst for why agriculture started to become replaced by industry. Coal-powered steam engines created a new type of energy, which sped up the manufacturing of railroads and accelerating the economy. Now, the second industrial revolution started at the end of the 19th century with massive technological advancements in electricity, gas, and oil. And as a result of this revolution, we find the invention of the fuel engine, which led to the invention of the automobile and the airplane. We see a demand and development for better steel used in modern high-rises and ships, advances in chemical research, along with improved communications such as the telegraph and telephone. And towards the second half of the 20th century, we really came into what we know as the third industrial revolution, which brought about a rise in nuclear energy, but primarily is thought of in terms of advances in technology, advances in electronics, telecommunications, and computers, which is simply jaw-dropping compared to what existed prior to that. And now we find ourselves on the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution, known as Industry 4.0. And it involves the adoption of cyber physical systems such as the Internet of Things and the Internet of Systems. Now, the Internet of Things is, think of it this way, it's a network of interconnected smart devices that allow each separate device to interact from other devices on the network. The Internet of Systems represents business-owned systems that can collect data from this Internet of Things network to make independent decisions about various business functions. And think about that again in the context of what we talked about in the way of some of the software and some of the advantages of what we're seeing. So we're really now on the beginning point of artificial intelligence in terms of devices speaking with one another, and from those communications and from the data that it's observing, it's able to create processes and analysis without our intervention. Now, whether autonomous machines are a good or bad thing really depends on who you ask. Some view this as straight out of science fiction and not viewed in a very favorable way. Many also view it as a reduction in individuals and employment associated with particular jobs. Now, on the plus side, people view this as advancement because we're able to go through calculations and develop medicines and technology and scientific breakthroughs that solve problems that have plagued us over time. But again, going back to the issues associated with automation and it taking over what once represented individual jobs, well, this is a very real threat. And this threat is illustrated by a study that was called The Future of Employment: How Susceptible Are Jobs to Computerization? It was done by Dr. Frey and Osborne back in the summer of 2013, and it was in Oxford University. And what they did was they took a look at approximately 702 different occupations. And what they determined was the probability. They ranked each occupation in terms of the ones that were the most susceptible to, or I should say the least susceptible to computerization, down to the ones that were almost a lock certainty that they would be susceptible to being fully automated, and individuals associated with that occupation would find themselves out of a job. Additionally, they attached a probability with each of the occupations in the rankings. So some of the key ones, because again, we're on the cusp on sort of the welcome mat of the fourth generation of the Industrial Revolution, and looking at the developments in rapid fashion that are going to take place over the next 10, 15, and 20 years. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, how vulnerable are we as a profession for some of these roles? Well, taking a look at financial managers, ranked actually the safest of the bunch at 152 out of 702, with a 6.9% probability of being fully automated out of a job. 217 out of 702 for financial analysts, so there's a 23% probability. For compensation, benefits, and job analysis specialists, 47% probability, and they rank in at 286. But as we'll soon see, it starts to go south from here. Word processors and typists rank at 442 with an 81% probability of being automated. Tax examiners, revenue agents, our friends at the IRS, 586 out of 702, they've got a 93% probability of automation. Here we are, accountants and auditors, 94%. We are at the low end of the totem pole. Billing and posting clerks, 96%. Payroll and timekeeping clerks, 97%. Down at 671 in the ranking, bookkeeping, accounting, and auditing clerks. And the almost nearly at the very bottom at 695 with a 99% probability in the years to come, tax preparers. Well, I would think that the first reaction is you hope that these guys are wrong, but if they're not wrong, then it's actually quite frightening to consider what the future has in store for us. And I think that it's not very easy to be joyful and happy if we're out of a job, but clearly the future of accounting is changing quite a bit, and we need to adapt to those changes. And the best way we can adapt is to have some running idea of what the future has in store for us. Well, I think clearly automation, skills update, and a changing overall model is what we can foresee from the current times. So when we look at automation,